and I am here with my June wrap up. I read so many books this month, like I can't even believe it. I read 18 books, and almost half of them were audiobooks, so thank you so much. And I finally succumbed and signed up for Audible, and I signed up for Audible and the romance package, which has like a new name, maybe like Escape or something. I don't know, I can't remember, and my phone is over there charging, so I can't look it up. But I'm really proud of myself. This month was crazy, which I predicted. Mainly it was stuff that was planned. There was some other stuff that I'm dealing with in my personal life that I'm trying not to think about because month. So like I said, I read 18 books. There were 4 3-star reads, 8 4-star reads, and 6 5-star reads. So let's get started. So first I read Quartet Fives by Kate Elliott, which I gave 3 stars, and this is a young adult fantasy novel. It is the first book in a trilogy. Whew. I was confused the majority of this book, which is why I gave it 3 stars instead of 4. And I don't mean confused in like the good way. I think sometimes in books, especially fantasy, you can have some sort of confusion element as you're learning the world and as mysteries are revealed. But this was really like distracting confusion. Mainly I didn't understand a lot of the like political like nuances in this world enough to feel like I fully understood why groups of people were acting the way that they were. But I did still enjoy it. I think the characters are interesting. I do plan on continuing to read this. I've already bought the rest of the series. Apparently this is like inspired by or is a retelling of Little Women, which I've never read. I really have no interest in, but it does have 5 sisters in it, which was why I had picked it up, because I like family stories. That wasn't as prominent as I was hoping it would be, but I am hopeful for the rest of the series. The romance was a little rushed and weird, but I'm hopeful it'll like even out throughout the rest of the series. And she is dealing with some interesting like topics in this world. So there is kind of like a racial divide between like a darker skinned and a lighter skinned people. I'm pretty sure that's explicitly stated. I'm pretty sure they have different skin colors. And I do think that's interesting, and I think it's really interesting when fantasy authors deal with it, because they kind of get to explore those topics without the baggage, for lack of a better word, of our world. Obviously that informs it because you can't escape it as an author, but they're able to explore it more in their own way instead of having to ground it in like actual reality, although this is pretty like it follows like the same. I don't know, it makes sense in my head. I'm gonna stop talking now. So then I reread Graceling by Kristen Kishore, and I read this as an audiobook from my library. This was a reread of like, I've read this so many times. And this is a full cast audiobook, which I love and highly recommend full cast audios. I gave this 5 stars, of course. This is the first book in the Graceling Realm trilogy, but it takes place after Fire. This series is more of a series of companion books. I really enjoy these characters. I always love Poe. I think Poe is always amazing, and I really liked Bitter Blue, like more than I remember liking her. And I don't know if it's because I didn't particularly enjoy Bitter Blue the novel, and so like I have in my head this weird like prejudice against her or something, but I actually really enjoyed her in this, and it made me want to reread Bitter Blue, which I will do at some point, probably on audio. There's a ton of intrigue and politics that always interests me when I read this. I will say every time I reread this, if you've read it before, I start to question the actual logistics of Katz's grace. Like, it seems sometimes to be a little convenient, but I can overlook it most of the time. So then I read an e-arc I got from NetGalley, and that was Guarding the Amish Midwife by Dana R. Lynn. I gave this 3 stars. This is an Amish story, of course. It's romantic suspense. It was fast. It was fairly suspenseful. I don't read a ton of like romantic suspense or suspenseful reads. Actually, romantic suspense usually doesn't work for me because I find it, Sarah from Smart Bitches talks about this. It's like, our life is in danger, let's bone. And it's like, that's just ridiculous. Obviously there is no boning in that. Maybe that's not obvious, but there's none of the sex in an Amish romance. The romance did feel a little rushed, which I think is a common issue with romantic suspense, like I already said. But the characters were interesting. I would read more in this series if I was in the mood for it. Like, they're all romantic suspense type stories. And this one follows Amish midwife, and she's on her way to help her cousin with her birth. Like, her cousin is still a few weeks out, but she's on her way to see her, and she ends up witnessing a murder along the way and gets like wrapped up in that, which there are like some like political issues there, because the Amish don't typically like to involve themselves in like English, like the English world, so like the police force and stuff. And the hero is a policeman, and he was Amish, and he left the Amish community after something happened to his brother, where his parents didn't pursue like legal or like consequences to that. So that was interesting. But yeah, it was good. I liked it. I read The Raging Ones by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I guess technically I reread this because I got an arc of The Last Hope, which is the second/final book in this duology by them. And I wanted to reread this before I read that, which I plan on reading in July. It comes out in August. And this I actually got as an audiobook from the library. And it's not full cast audio, but this story follows 3 different POVs, and each POV has a narrator, so that is really nice. There's Michael, Court, and Franny, and this is 5 stars. Again, of course, it's great. It's YA, sci-fi. It's definitely like slightly more mature YA in my opinion. The story follows every person is, when they're born, they're like tested with this machine, and they're given a death day. So it's the day that they will die. There's nothing you can do to avoid your death day. But Franny, Court, and Michael all do somehow. And so they live together and try to join this like this space expedition to escape the world, so that nobody ever finds out that they skipped their death day, because they have no idea what would happen if somebody found out. It's still great. So much happens in this book. Like, I thought that last time, and even knowing that in my head, I was still blown away by how much they were able to put into this story. Krista and Becca are just great with characters. They're really good at creating like a found family, which is what you have with these 3. I love them. There is a romance in here, which is just so adorable. So adorable. And I feel like, if you've read this, can you tell me, do you think this is a Slytherin and Hufflepuff relationship? Because like, I almost think it is, but I feel like maybe it's more of like a Ravenclaw. Like, I could say Ravenclaw, Gryffindor maybe. I only say that because I know Krista and Becca talk about how they love Slytherin and Hufflepuff relationships, and they are adorable, don't get me wrong. I feel like it's kind of one. Let me know what you think. But I love their romance. I think there's supposed to be another romance in the next book, and I kind of think I know what it would be, but I kind of feel like it could be something else, and I don't know which one I would prefer. We'll see. And all 3 narrators are fantastic in here. I love them. And then I read Warrior of the Wild by Trisha Levenseller, which is her newest release, and now I'm all caught up on the Trisha Levenseller, and I'm really sad about it. This is YA fantasy. I would classify this more as just traditional fantasy, personally. It is a standalone, which I think is awesome. I flew through this in like a night. I was just sucked in immediately and was in love with this world and these characters. I just like, I can say I don't think Trisha Levenseller's writing would work for everybody, and like there is a romantic element, and I have seen some people say that they think the romance is too much. I personally don't think that, but I can see how that would bother people. For me, her blend of like romance and characters and action and fantasy works perfectly. So I love her, and I will read everything she writes. This follows a girl named Rasmira who is sent on a deadly task that she's really not meant to complete after failing a trial in her town. So everybody basically has like a job that they train for, and you have to pass this trial, and if you don't, you get sent out on a task that you're really not expected to ever complete, and you're just expected to die in shame. Yeah, I really liked what she did with these characters, with the story. I thought the romance was cute and fun, and added like, there's a friendship element in here as well that I felt like brought some levity to a like otherwise very serious time and story. And this is like Viking inspired as well. I read Exclusively Yours by Shannon Stacy, which is the first book in the Kowalski series. I gave this 4 stars. It is contemporary romance. It's a reunited lover story. They're like high school sweethearts. He's a horror author, which I actually really liked. I don't typically like author main characters, but this one really worked for me. And she works for a magazine, like kind of like a tabloidy magazine, and she reconnects with him for work. She's supposed to get an interview with him, and he agrees if she goes on this like 2-week-long camping trip with his family, and he'll answer one question for every day she lasts on the trip. And they reconnect, and there's tons of like family stuff, which if you don't know this yet, I am all about like the family interaction, found family, real like blood family. I don't care, it's all beautiful. There's also like other romance stories going on in here, like that kind of serve as like B plots that I thought were really interesting, and I liked reading those as well. Yeah, I enjoyed this, and I will definitely read more of the Kowalski family. I listened to The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. I got this from the library. I give it 3 stars. This is like a self-help book, I guess I would call it. Self-development, maybe. It was written as a narrative, which was interesting. In some ways, it makes the material easier to digest, but it also made it come across a little like hokey for me, which, don't be wrong, I love some cheese as much as the next person, but I feel like this just like, it wasn't a great narrative, and then it wasn't a great self-development book, so together it was just kind of bleh. I think it has some interesting and compelling arguments, but because of the way it was written and the story he decided to tell through the narrative, it comes across really self-important. And I would have preferred, even with the narrative, if there was more evidence behind why I should do these things to make my life better. But that's just me. I do know that this book is pretty like controversial, like it's not well liked by everybody. And then I listened to another audiobook, and that was The First Conspiracy by Brad Metzger and Josh Mensch. I gave this 4 stars. This is nonfiction. This is written pretty narratively. It reminds me, I've only read one David McCullough, and it was 1776. It reminds me kind of that, like that. It's about a plot to kill George Washington during the American Revolution. Overall, I really liked it. The first half was particularly confusing. It was kind of written where it was like, you would see like different elements that didn't seem to make sense, or like why we were jumping between these different storylines and different people, and then eventually they like came together, and you saw like how all of those pieces came together for this plot to occur. It was a very easy read. I guess some people have complaints about that. They think it's like too dumbed down. I don't think so. I think it's fine to make history approachable and easy for people to read and understand. Like, you could give this to like a middle schooler and they would totally understand it, and I think that's fine. So I enjoyed it. It was a story I had never heard about, which kind of surprised me because I took like a couple American history classes. Particularly, I took one in college on the American Revolution, so it kind of surprised me. I hadn't heard of it before, but it was interesting. And if you have any nonfiction history books that you want to recommend, leave them below. I don't care when or what they're about. I'm pretty open when it comes to my historical nonfiction. I just think it's interesting to learn about history. So, and then I read Prince Charming by Rachel Hawkins, which this is a reissue of a book called Royals by her, with a new title and a new cover. I gave this 4 stars, maybe 3.5. I don't know. It's contemporary YA, and it's about Daisy, who gets sucked into this world that she doesn't really want to be a part of when her sister gets engaged to the Crown Prince of Scotland. So this is a like sort of alternate reality where Scotland has a royal family. The British royal family still exists, but they're just like British, like Great Britain, not over the whole UK. I read it in like 2 hours. It was very fast. It was very cute. But it wasn't quite as developed as I would have liked. Like, there were like these elements of Daisy with her sister that I wish were more deeply explored. The romance I wish was explored a little deeper. Like, it almost felt like, I mean, it's definitely more mature than this, but it almost felt like a Disney Channel movie where it's very like surface, which is enjoyable, it's entertaining, but it's not something that I'm gonna like dwell on or think about or be like, these are my OTP or anything. And then I reread Silver Shadows by Rochelle Mead, which is book 5 in the Bloodline series. I actually got this as an audiobook from the library. It is narrated by 2 authors since the book is written in dual POV. I could not stop listening. The tension was amazing. Sorry if my voice is getting really nasally. I can like feel it happening. I feel like my accent is already really nasally, so I'm sorry. But I did really enjoy this. I love these characters and I love the series, and I will continue to love it. So then I read another e-arc, and that is The Duke is But a Dream by Anna Bennett. This is my first book by her, and I got this as an e-arc, like I said, from NetGalley. I gave this 3 stars. It's book 2 in a series called The Debutante Diaries. It's historical romance. It was a cute, easy read. Nothing too dark. There is an amnesia element, which I think I've only ever read one other amnesia story, and in that one the hero knew who the girl was and was like not telling her, whereas this one they don't. The hero and his sister is involved as well, does not know who this girl is. So I'm not sure amnesia storylines work for me. If you have any that you really enjoy, let me know and maybe I'll check them out. So it wasn't anything special, but I thought it was an enjoyable read. No regrets. Would recommend if you thought it sounded interesting. And then I reread Him by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy, which came out a few years ago, and this is a contemporary romance, maybe new adult, whatever. Hockey romance. It's male, it's like friends to lovers. I give this 4 stars again. These 2 guys are best friends. They met at hockey camp when they were teenagers, and then their senior year something happens and they just stop talking to each other, and then their senior year of high school they meet up again at I think they're at the Frozen Four. I'm pretty sure both of their colleges are competing at the Frozen Four, and so they see each other again. One is gay and one is, okay, this might be a spoiler or not, but like I'm gonna just say it. So he thinks he's straight, he ends up deciding he's bi, which is fine, but I just don't know how to say that without like, is that a spoiler? I don't know. Obviously it's not. They end up together, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, they reconnect. They kind of navigate the idea of becoming a couple and what that would mean. They go back to their hockey camp to coach. It's adorable. And although I will say there are some like sad or angsty moments in here. Like there's some like bigotry and stuff, of course, which makes me sad. But overall, I think it's a very cute story, and I really like the romance, and I just am a sucker for a good hockey romance. And then I read The Night Circus, which was my last book in my spring TBR, and I finished it. It took me a while. I ended up having to read like a couple chapters every day. I give this 4 stars. It's historical fiction, fantasy, magical elements. I was often really confused. For like the first third, I was like pretty sucked in, and then I was like and then I was like I don't know. So there were slow parts. There's a lot of like time jumping, which is confusing. I think if I reread this, which I don't think I ever would, but if I reread it, I think I would be more okay with that, because obviously I know where it's going. But especially when I first started, eventually I was just like, okay, this is just how this book is written. But at first I was like very thrown off by it. It was an interesting story. I enjoyed it, but I don't feel like the magic pull that so many other people feel from this story. And then I finished the Bloodline series, and I read the Ruby Circle. Again, I listened to the audiobook. This is the final Bloodlines book. I gave it 5 stars. It was continued to be a satisfying conclusion, just like it was the first time I read it. I would love for Rochelle Mead to write more in this world. I have requests if she was taking them. I don't know if she ever would, but yeah. Am I saying this is a perfect book? No. If this was not the final book in a series, it would get 4 stars. I wrote this in my review years ago, and I stand by it. I reread the review. If the last book in a series, especially like a really long series like this, not just a trilogy, is satisfying, it gets 5 stars, because I don't know, it makes sense in my head. I have a bin down here that my books are in, and I just took the last book out, and Murphy's in it now. Do you think that bin is for you? No, it's for the books. So then I read Us, which is the second book / final book in the Him Us duology thing. Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It was definitely a harder read. There's a lot more like emotion in this one. Like, not that there isn't emotion in the first one, but I don't really. But basically, I guess what I mean is like, one of the characters is a professional hockey player, and he doesn't want to be out in the NHL, so they're hiding their relationship. So there's like a lot of like tension and angst almost around that, and that's just really hard for me to read. Like, it just makes me really sad, and I don't know, it just makes me sad. And so it's not anything against this book, it's just like a personal thing that it's like, I read this slower than I would normally read a Serena Bowen or an Elle Kennedy, and it's just because I don't like seeing characters I like not happy. And on Audible, my first Audible book, this was in the romance package, I listened to Addicted for Now. So after reading the Bloodline series, I figured I want to reread this series. I started it a while ago, but I just kept not picking it up, and I was like, I'll try the audiobooks. So that's what I did. This is the 3rd / second, depending on how you number the Addicted series books by Becca Ritchie. It's contemporary romance. If you don't know, I just love these characters, like especially Lily and Lo. Like, they are one of, if not my OTP. Like, their story breaks my heart. I know a lot of people struggle with it, and I understand why you would, but I also would hope that you'd be respectful of those of us who do really love them and have an emotional connection to them. Like Lily especially, well, both of them really, like, I connect with on such like a deep level. So yeah, I just really enjoyed this. I couldn't stop listening to it, even though I've read this multiple times. And I'm really excited to keep listening to these books. And if you have read these, don't hate me. Maybe my opinion will change. But as of right now, like, I really don't hate Jonathan. Like I understand he's not like a good person, but like sometimes he like, he cares in his own way. I don't know. Anyway, oh, and this is definitely a Slytherin Hufflepuff relationship, by the way. And then after reading Us, I really wanted to reread Good Boy by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. This is connected to that world. It follows Jessica, who is one of those guys' sisters, and Blake, who is the teammate of one of the other guys. Give it 4 stars, contemporary hockey romance. It's cute. Blake, the hero, is a lot of personality. My camera battery is dying. It's really cute. Like, the romance is really cute. They're really supportive of each other, which I love. Let me change the battery. And then the last book I read this month was Let's Get Textual by Tegan Hunter, and this is a new adult / contemporary romance, and I gave this 4 stars. There are tons of texts in those are texts, you probably can't tell, sorry, in here, which I love. I've talked about this before. I love like textual communication in books, whether it's texting, emails, letters. I just love that in my stories. The relationship was really cute. This book was better than I thought it was gonna be, which was rude. I should never have thought that, but it was. The 2 main characters have really great chemistry and banter. I just thought they were really adorable and funny together. The hero is on the nerdy side, which I liked. I wish he would have been like a little more nerdy, because I think that there should be more of that in our lives, but it's fine. And I definitely want to read more by Tegan Hunter. This is the start of a companion series, and I definitely plan on picking up the other books in this series. I'm really excited to read those. So those are the 18 books I read this month. I have already read a book, yes, just one, in the month of July, and I'm very excited for July. The Reading Rush, formerly known as Booktubeathon, is happening in July. I will be participating. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye. I am filming a video. Do you excuse me? No. Ow, 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 ow. Can we please, like, not be on me like this? I am not. We did this last weekend. Ow. I feel like you just, like, attacked my neck. Oh my gosh, it hurts so much, Murphy. I probably should have put these down in some sort of like order so I could get a thumbnail without killing myself. But that would require the use of a brain. Ah. I don't even know if I can do this with all the books. Ugh. Normally I try to make them like, I should just start doing the thumbnail at the beginning so I can stack them in the order I like. Because I never want to do it when I'm done filming. And if you ever want to know what I read in the month ahead of time, on my Instagram I try every Monday to do a post called What I Read Last Week, where I take pictures of all the physical books that I've read, and then in the description I give you my rating for all the books that I've read. And my Instagram is just Daydreaming Through Books. I will link it below. Okay, this is really heavy. Okay.